General Flynn is a wonderful man. I think he's been treated very, very unfairly by the media.
You're disappointed by the story. The first I heard of it, and I think it is an affirmation of the president's decision to ask General Flynn to resign.
The Trump administration's tone towards former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn changing sharply after revelations he was paid to work on behalf of the Turkish government during the presidential campaign. And we're back now with the panel. Well, let me reset for all of you. Michael Flynn was perhaps Donald Trump's top foreign policy advisor during the campaign, but he registered this week as a foreign agent for work he did at that same time during the campaign for the government of Turkey. And it turns out the Trump transition after the election was told about this other job. Julie, the White House says that the president, at any point in this process, as a candidate, as a president-elect, and as president, was never told that Michael Flynn was moonlighting, that he had another job. Do you find that as hard to believe as I do?
I do, because there were public reports about what Michael Flynn was doing. Even after the election, you had Elijah Cummings, a Democrat, sending a letter to Mike Pence asking the White House to look into this, raising questions about this. And even if we do take the White House's word on this and accept that no one passed this information on to Donald Trump, I'm not sure that makes it any better, because then you're in a situation where you have the person who is now the White House counsel receiving word from Flynn's lawyer that he may have to register as a foreign agent, and not feeling as though that raised red flags about his participation at a high level in the White House, not raising that issue to the White House. So I think either way, if the president was aware and didn't think it was concerning, or if top staffers didn't bring this to the White House, I don't think the Trump administration comes out looking very good here.
Do you think this fades away? I mean, Flynn is gone, or do you think it stays?
Flynn is gone, but I think that this opens up a whole new avenue in terms of looking at Flynn and what he was doing during the campaign and then during the transition and his brief time at the White House. We've been focused a lot on his conversations with the Russian ambassador, but now I think that we're going to start to dig in more on what he was doing for this company that could have benefited the Turkish government.
Jason, maybe I'm old-fashioned. In fact, I am old-fashioned, but I got to say, I find it shocking that here is the top national security advisor to the presidential nominee of the Republican Party, one of the two people who's going to be president, who was participating in top secret classified briefings, and it turns out that he was working for another country at the same time.
And not just another country. I mean, Turkey isn't France or Britain. Turkey's taken a sharp turn for the worst in recent years. And so it's doubly disturbing, I think, that we're talking about Turkey here. And we can only hope that the administration does a better job of vetting its other top officials. The other thing that disturbed me about this episode was just the lack of communication among the administration. Here you had Sean Spicer, the White House spokesman, out there still defending Flynn, saying his credentials are impeccable. Then you had the vice president telling Bret Baier, you know, now you know why we fired him. I mean, there needs to be better communication in terms of messaging coming out of this administration. We've seen this on other issues before. I think they really need to get their act together.
To make the point, though, Flynn is saying that his lawyers notified during the transition, not during the campaign, but during the transition, notified Don McGahn, who ended up as the White House counsel, about the fact that he had done this work and that he might and asking whether he needed to register as a foreign agent, which he ended up doing just this last week. Is it conceivable to you that that information would not be passed on to the president-elect before he decides to make this man his national security advisor?
No, it isn't. And either Trump did not appreciate the seriousness of this, or he didn't know about it. And I think it may be the former.
It's important to note there was a second conversation also that happened after the inauguration, when Flynn was already in the White House as national security advisor, where his lawyers told the White House counsel's office they were going to have to move forward with the foreign agent registration.
All right, let's switch subjects, because there was other news this week. Wikileaks had another major document dump, more than 8,000 secret files from the CIA that indicated how that agency was able to turn cell phones and television sets and other devices into cyber weapons. Here was Sean Spicer's reaction to this disclosure.
This is the kind of disclosure that undermines our country, our security, and our well-being.
Michael, I want to ask you, some conservatives were praising Julian Assange and praising WikiLeaks during the campaign for the fact that they were releasing the emails of John Podesta and embarrassing Hillary Clinton in the process. Were they wrong then, and do they need to apologize?
Well, WikiLeaks is an enemy of the United States, and I think both sides over the last couple of years have had times where, for partisan political reasons, WikiLeaks has appeared to be useful. You talked about in the last couple of years with the election, but earlier when there was embarrassing things coming out on WikiLeaks about the Bush administration or otherwise, there were people on the left who were praising WikiLeaks. Certainly during the Snowden time, there were people who were praising that. We have a big problem in this country if there is somebody inside the CIA leaking this type of information. It's an incredibly serious thing. It has to be taken care of, and both sides need to recognize that WikiLeaks is not something that should be embraced for domestic partisan politics. It's something that we all as Americans need to be deeply concerned about.
I want you to, because this is an issue that's being debated in the conservative community, though. You say that you believe that WikiLeaks and Julian Assange are enemies of this country.
I think that we need to be able to have a conversation in this country about what is the right balance between security and privacy. Those are important conversations. They're conversations that largely need to happen inside the Capitol Hill and with people who are elected by us to represent our interests and have security clearances. But certainly that's a valid question for us to be having. It is not a conversation that should be run by foreign actors and foreign actors with tied to a country like Russia. That's obviously not the appropriate way for a democratic country to debate difficult subjects.
Juan, Michael makes a good point. I mean, yes, in the last year or so, it's the conservatives who've embraced WikiLeaks and its revelations about Hillary Clinton and the campaign and Podesta and the Democratic National Committee. But there was a time with the original WikiLeaks dump, the Bradley Manning, Chelsea Manning stuff, that it was liberals who were talking about it.
Well, there's a key distinction here, Chris. Remember, in one case, we're talking about things that involve domestic intervention, spying on people here in the United States. What was revealed this week was about CIA methods, sources, tactics overseas. Is anybody saying that the CIA shouldn't be spying on our enemies, shouldn't be keeping us safe? Of course they should be. So all this is the work, to my mind, of Assange and WikiLeaks as really puppets for the Russians. Because I think that's clear now. That's where the information's coming from. And they are driving this whole argument, I think, one, in terms of the election, as you pointed out, to undermine trust and faith in American democratic processes, but secondly, now to undermine faith and confidence in an American institution, the Central Intelligence Agency. And I think they do this quite directly in service to Russian agenda.
So in that sense, should liberals, conservatives, Republicans, and Democrats all give a stiff arm to WikiLeaks?
Indeed. I don't think there's any question. And Michael and I agree on this. They're an enemy of the American people. But I think it's ironic, to go back to the way you posed the question to Michael, that you had people who said, oh, no big deal when it was Podesta's email, when it was the DNC hacking. Oh, well, we don't notice that they're not hacking the other side, not hacking the Republicans, not hacking Donald Trump, and damaging trust and confidence in the Clinton campaign.
Julie, this leak comes on top of all the others from the intelligence community, from law enforcement about President Trump. We're going to talk about Russia in the next segment, but what do they think at the White House about the inability of this government to keep secrets secret?
It's driving them crazy. Every day they come in and they see information on the front pages of the newspapers and on television that is supposed to be kept private. They are blaming this on career people or Obama political appointees at these agencies who are holdovers right now. But to some extent, I think it does reveal what is a real problem, that there are people in this government who don't believe in what Trump is doing and want to expose it. He has to grapple with that.